Chapter 5, which is a chapter on tracking and reflection. So tracking refers to the observation and data that you will collect as you're observing discussions. Now, obviously, that is a little bit easier if you are in a humanities style discussion where there's a group of 12 students sitting around the table, and you're observing or you're facilitating, and you can take data on them because they're all in one place. If you're tracking a teamwork or you are having a sort of more mobile group-based Harkness discussion, as might be the case in math or science, it's harder to get a beat or harder to track and get a read on the whole group. Of course, in scenarios like that, actually, I'll get into that shortly. Reflection, as I mentioned back in the teamwork section, that is the material that you're going to give to students so that they can think about the dynamics in their discussion. So let's start first in section 1, which is what this video is about. And I'm going to just go over the 3 most common paper-based tracking tools at CVU. So let's start with the 2-column tracker. I think that this is pretty intuitive when you look at it. Student names obviously go down the left here. There is a scale, or not a scale, I'm sorry, a glossary of the types of notation that you could make. That notation, of course, would go here in the right column. And, this, as in all things that you're going to see in this course, this glossary or this index, I should probably know the difference between those two and what those are, but I may just misuse that and just keep going. Let's call it a key. That's even better. Okay, so this key are notations that I use. As in all things, I would encourage you to edit this document, make a copy and edit this document to add a key that feels more appropriate for your use. I will almost always, so for example, if it's a text reference, I will just write T because I want to be able to keep it moving forward. However, if a student says something particularly profound or makes a move that I think really helps the group, I will note that that doesn't exist in the key. So for example, if another student asks the group to pause and do a think and write because they believe that the group is moving too fast in the discussion, I might write ask, think, and write. And the reason that I'm going to keep this tracker or any tracker would be twofold. Number one, definitely to give feedback on the discussion. Even if you're not assessing, which as I'm going to talk about in the assessment section of this class, I am moving more and more away from assessment, but I'll hold that until I get there. But if you are going to assess, this tool, this tracker, is your that's what you're going to take and use to form your assessment. So back in times when I would have assessed, I would literally take this document, I will bring it home, always take a picture of it so you don't lose it. I would bring it home and I would look at it, and that would inform the kind of assessment that or the score that I would give students. Okay, so that's the 2-column tracker. The next is the oval tracker, and this is ubiquitous if you were to go to Phillips Exeter, the Harkness mothership, as I like to call it. This is something that they created. And of course, it really works for them because all of their classes have the oval table. And so literally what teachers there would do if they were using this tracker is they would draw an oval in the middle of this empty box. They would label the names of all the students and where they're sitting around the oval. And then they would start to draw arrows from student to student, or I'd sometimes put a nice, like a black dot in the middle of the oval. And a line from a student to the black dot would mean this is a comment that was just made to the group. It's not student to student. But of course, even if students are just making a point to the whole group, you could simply draw a line from one student to another student to indicate this student spoke, and then this student spoke, even if both students just sort of like shared a comment to the whole group. It doesn't have to be, I, Brad, am speaking directly to another student. And just like in the last example, I have a key here of the kinds of things that I might note down. Where are you writing this down? You could draw them next to the lines from student to student. I like to put the key next to the student name. If you're wondering, geez, that feels like a lot of writing in a relatively small space, that is how I feel, and that's why I don't use the oval tracker anymore. I use the 2-column tracker. But the oval trackers are much more visually appealing, and they give students a better sense of, like, they're not a visual metaphor, but they visualize for students. They're a visual manifestation for students of the discussion. And again, you see this all over Phillips Exeter. I think it's a really good practice if you use the oval trackers, hang them up in your room so that your tracking is fully transparent. Everybody can see what you saw in the discussion, and I think that they're cool group-generated artwork, frankly. So the third tracker, I call this the tally tracker, and this is something that I took from another. It is an amendment of a tracker that I experienced at the Exeter Humanities Institute, which is essentially Phillips Exeter's adult teacher summer camp to learn how to do Harkness, or how to have Harkness discussions. Really, really useful PD that I can't recommend enough. You can email me if you want to know more about it. Again, it's the Exeter Humanities Institute. Really, really wonderful. They also have institutes for almost every other discipline that we teach. So email me if you're interested in learning more about that. But this one, I think is pretty intuitive. Names down the left column. And then what you're doing is you're just making check marks every time one of these things is happening. The pro of this tally tracker is that it's very visual and it's very easy for students to see what you saw. I think the main con of this tracker is, for me at least, if I am going to assess, it's sort of harder to make notes for myself on here. Now, but again, if what you're going to do is share your tracker with your students, which I'll cover a little bit more when in the next video, I show you some digital trackers. If you're going to take notes for yourself, maybe you don't want students to see those notes. So, again, I think if what you want to do is take notes for yourself, this tracker doesn't really lend itself to that. But it does give students, especially if you show them this tracker after the discussion, it does give students a really clear sense of the kinds of things that you're looking for. You could even, especially, maybe you're filling out the 2-column tracker because you're going to assess, and then you have a student who's feeling unprepared or who's not ready for the discussion. You just have them fill out the tally tracker. I think that's something I've done many times. I think that is a great tool to help kids better understand the dynamics of Harkness discussion. So that's all I have to say about the paper trackers, and I will see you again or engage with you again in the next video on digital trackers.